My name's Christina.
And I'm Matt.
And this is New Ways Podcast. Today our guest is a yoga teacher and practitioner. She's extremely kind-hearted and deeply passionate about helping individuals on their self-discovery journey. Bianca Cadiz, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I really feel the work that you guys share and create together is really inspiring. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And we're so excited to have you here as well. And, I know that when Christina first brought you to my attention, she's like, hey, I have this friend who's a phenomenal yoga instructor. And I think that she would make a great person for this podcast, and then started talking about some of the stuff that you do. Was just like, whoa, I'm very excited to kind of hear your story and hear all the incredible work that you do.
Yeah, and on top of that, too, I'm just like, we'll get into it. We'll learn a lot about you, but, you're extremely grounded and, you're so pure of heart. And, I'm so excited to jump into this conversation.
Yes,
so,
I'm pumped.
Yeah, so are we. So to get the ball rolling a little bit, you are a yoga instructor. I know everybody probably has, a generic idea about yoga, regardless if they've practiced it or not. So I'm curious, though, what is yoga to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there are so many definitions of yoga. And, some people might think, oh, it's being in a heated room and dying in your sweat and having to hold postures for so long. But yoga in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, it's an ancient yogic text. And the second Yoga Sutra, they mention that yoga is the cessation of the mind modifications. So essentially that translates into the end of the mind stuff, quieting the mind. So essentially yoga is stilling the mind. And that is what I love so much about yoga. I think there's a misconception that yoga is only physical, but it's really about controlling the mind and being able to reach that state of enlightenment. But yoga to me really is a practice. It's a way of being. It's a way of connecting to the self. And yeah, yoga is a amazing form of healing and being able to connect mind, body, and soul through the practice of yoga.
That was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, that was so amazing. And I love how you put it too, because I do understand now there's even you said sweating and moving your body and this there's hot yoga,
which I love that too.
Yeah.
It's all part of it.
No, yeah, it's all great. I love me a good hot yoga class, but there's times in it where I'm just what am I doing? I personally prefer kind of the slower type of yogas, just because it does really get me to actually slow down on focus on my body. Totally. And you're right though, when you're trying to focus on all these different poses, regardless if you are trying to or not, to me, it's easier. It really soothes your mind when you're all right, I have to focus on moving my body this way and getting into flow.
Yeah, no, I love that. I completely agree. I think once you're in that flow state, that is, I guess, what the sutra was explaining too. You're stilling your mind because you're so connected to your breath. And also I wanted to add that yoga in Sanskrit literally means to yoke. So it's union, to unite. So there's so much union with your body and breath and movement. That's vinyasa, syncing your breath to movement. Union of yourself to the universe, or union of, can be uniting whatever it means to you. So I think that's really interesting, and being able to acknowledge that from the root of the word is really cool.
Yeah.
Going to my first classes in the beginning, I think that's what really resonated with me too, because I would just hear my teachers drop little
gems, and you're what
little
did
gems,
I just hear?
Phrases from the Yoga Sutras, or phrases of, it can sound cheesy, but presence and stuff. But then it's kind of uncovering that meaning. You can say, oh, this is the definition, but you don't truly know or feel it once you actually experience it.
Yeah.
So I can completely relate to what you
also
said.
Too. Matt, have you ever done yoga?
No.
No, never?
Well,
Let's go to a
actually,
yoga
I take
class
that
after.
back. Wait.
No, actually.
I have I'm just not great at it. So I was just like, I'm a brick
Can
of
I
a human.
say something about
Yes.
that? That is such a misconception about yoga, Matt. You don't have to be good or flexible at yoga.
I know.
Anyone can do yoga.
I know. I just struggle.
And that's how you get, like, we talk about this all the time. Like, you start doing the thing and you
do.
get better. So, like, that's how you get more flexible, is showing up.
You do.
Yeah.
I will say that, you know, interesting enough, when I had a gym membership a while back, at Equinox, interesting
Nice.
enough. And they did a very specific type of yoga, which was really cool.
Do you remember what kind?
I don't know the exact name of it, but it was a meditative yoga strictly for high, like, careered adults. Like, it was specifically designed. It was on Sundays.
Interesting.
To reset yourself going into the Monday. It was so cool. And I did that a few times, and it was hands down one of the coolest experiences ever. I really struggled. I'm not gonna lie, because like, I'm not flexible, and some of the stuff I felt like you needed to be a little more flexible than what I was at. But that being said, it was a very grounding experience. I definitely have not done enough of it to feel like I can say I've done yoga. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's so stress relieving. Like, your experience with it, with the intention of it, you know, kind of easing the Sunday scaries. Like, I think that's awesome. Like, I definitely feel like yoga is a great way to, like, de-stress, and that's really cool. Yeah. And hey, you practice yoga. That's why it's called a practice, you know.
Truly.
Like, every experience is different, and I don't think you can ever, this is my personal opinion, I don't think you can ever, like, be perfect at yoga. It's a continuous practice. So maybe we should all take a yoga class together.
And when he said that, though, like, two things popped into my head. One being is, like, because I know there's, like, your traditional, I'm going to butcher this, vinyasa?
Vinyasa.
Yeah, vinyasa. I always have a hard time saying it, but I know there's the traditional type of yoga that most people do, but, like, my personal favorite is something called, like, Kundalini yoga. And it, like, has the mantras in it. It's focused really on, like, being still in the mind, and has slow movements. And on top of that, too, I know you're not doing it anymore, but I remember I was extremely blessed to be a part of your, like, beach yoga days, where she would teach yoga. It was a very flowy yoga on Sunset, like, in Santa Monica. And it was just the most blissful experience, like, listening to your voice, which is very soothing, as the sun's, going down.
Yes. I'm just like,
listening to your voice on the beach as the sun's going down.
That was a vibe. I can't believe, I think that was almost a year ago.
I know, it was.
Like, what? But
time flies.
Yeah, I think practicing yoga outside is such a game changer. Like, you just feel so much more connected to nature. And, like, I mean, I love a good music playlist, like, in yoga classes and stuff. Yeah. But just practicing, like, outside in nature, is really, really soothing.
Yeah. So since we're kind of on the topic of how we all, like, what kind of yoga we like, or how we experienced it for the first time, how did you get into yoga?
That's a great question. Whew. Okay.
Is it a loaded question?
No, I love that question, actually, because it makes me reflect back to kind of the beginning of this journey, and I'm really grateful that it found me at the time that it did. So this was probably in 2021. I had recently gotten out of a breakup, and I was just in this space where I wanted to try different things, like, give me all the healing things. Like, I'm down to meditate. Like, that's when I started to journal a lot. And then I forgot where I heard it from, but someone, like, mentioned, oh yeah, like, yoga's great to calm your mind and stuff. And, like, I heard it's, like, a great workout too. So I'm like, okay, sure, like, I'm down. So I remember going to my first yoga class at Raw Yoga in Long Beach. My home studio, like, has a special place in my heart. And I remember going to my first yoga class. I really did not know what to expect. Half of the time I was like, what is this awkward posture I'm holding? But I remember at the very end where we hold Shavasana, like the final surrender pose, I just felt like a weight was lifted off from me, like just like a release of emotions. And I literally had tears rolling down my face. And I had never experienced that ever in my life. And it's like I couldn't even label it as sad or like bad tears or bad emotions. It was just...
You don't have to label it. That's the thing. It's like what comes up, comes up. And oftentimes, even if you don't know what it is, it still feels good to just let whatever it is out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I discovered right then and there, like this feeling of release. And I think in that moment I was like, okay, Bianca, you're going to be okay. Aww. And yeah, like I think that moment I just remembered feeling a sense of presence and gratitude and just like an overwhelming amount of like just connection. And I guess you could say I was addicted to that feeling. Like that's what brought me to my mat over and over again. And every class was a different experience, but still that same feeling of like connection, of being connected.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. The first time I actually did yoga, I was not a huge fan of it.
I want to hear about your experience.
Oh my God. Like, it was just the weird, because I was working for FEMA in downtown Dallas. It was in the middle of COVID, but like Texas was pretty open. And I remember I was just like, I'm kind of bored. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I don't know. It was just a lot of emotions. 'Cause I'm still kind of like isolated and lonely. And I was like, I've heard like hot yoga is great. I was like, it's kind of a fad. So I went to my first like hot yoga studio, and I'll remember, speaking of not being flexible, and I've done gymnastics even since I was like a little kid.
Oh, wow.
Some of these things that they were like ways they were having me move, and like you have to align your body a certain way, because it's about being flexible, but it's also about being in like holding the position the right way to get the full benefit.
Right, and also not injure yourself too. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I just remember I felt so uncomfortable in some of these moves. I'm just like, I know I can bend, like I'm a bendy person, but why is this hurting so much?
Yep.
And we're gonna get into this later. I know why it was hurting me so much, because it was stuff like other things that my body was. Now I'm like, now that I'm more mind body connected, I'm like, I know what was coming up, because I was like, I'm athletic, like I do gymnastics, I'm flexible, why does this hurt so much? But it's funny though, after I like stopped doing it for a little bit, or I just transitioned my classes and tried all the different types of yogas in different settings, I started to miss it when I didn't have it. So my first yoga experience was not the best, but then I just want to share that, because then hopefully it can encourage people to like try it out if you don't like it at first, but you think I just had an inkling. I'm like, there's something here. Like, try it.
And I'm so glad you said that, because I think it's just following that curiosity, you know? And I think going in it without an expectation, you know, can...
Ooh, without an expectation.
Yeah. Can really teach you, like what you said, like, why is this hurting? Or one of my teachers actually mentioned, too, like, when you're holding a posture that's so uncomfortable and you're just, like, frustrated, that is the teacher in itself, too. Like, how do you talk to yourself in those moments of challenging times? Or how do you talk to your mind kindly when you're holding a pose? Or where does your mind go? Can you like come back to the present? And so
no, thankfully for me, I was like, why? Instead of like, I get where people can probably have some like not so serving thoughts and being like, I'm just not meant to bend this way. Besides just being introduced to yoga, when did you decide you wanted to be an instructor?
I decided to become an instructor when I think it was a thought that was in the back of my mind for quite some time. Like after taking more classes at my home studio, and honestly, I just became more and more inspired by my teachers. And I remember coming home after taking a class and like practice teaching my family, like literally forcing my sister to like
forcing her. She's like, we know how sisters can be.
She was like, okay, fine, but she enjoyed it. I think when I started to just pretend I was a teacher and like just share my inspiration with them, I remember like becoming more curious, like, okay, like more than just the physical practice, I'm actually curious to learn more about the philosophy, the ancient teachings of yoga, because that's what really landed and resonated with me in my own personal practice. So yeah, my studio just announced that they were hosting a teacher training in the upcoming fall, and I remember going to an info session, and I just had that moment of like, you know what? You've been thinking about this for quite some time, Bianca, just do it. Yeah. And I signed up right then and there. It was the fall of 2022. And yeah, and that
the rest is history.
One of the best decisions I made, for sure.
Wow. Well, I'm so happy that you just decided to like listen to your gut and your heart and be like, this is something that I've thought about doing. Like, let's try it. Because once again, like, I feel blessed to have taken your classes before, and just like the impact you're having is absolutely amazing. You mentioned a little bit like the philosophies in yoga. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that like specifically like piqued your interest in it? Because that's something I'm not too familiar with, honestly. Like I love the spiritual world. I love like learning about different philosophies and even like religions. Like, can you share a little bit?
Sure. And I'm no expert on the yogic philosophy. I love to learn continuously, so that's something that I'm actively doing right now too, because I think it kind of finds you at certain times when you read a text or a sutra. So I mentioned the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. That's probably one of the most popular ancient yogic texts, and it just lists out such simple yet profound teachings. Like the second sutra that I shared at the beginning was yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff. And that is really the goal of yoga, to still the mind. Kind of in meditation too, you hear of how your internal world reflects your external. And that is a lot of what the yogic texts mention. And there are different paths to yoga too. So Raja Yoga is the kind of the pathway to stilling the mind. And within Raja Yoga, there are 8 limbs. So think of it like a tree, right? And there's 8 limbs of yoga. And the asana, which is the postures that we hold in class, that's just one limb of the yoga system. The other ones are yamas, niyamas, and those are essentially kind of ways and ethical ways of living a yogic life. So a lot of it can be, one of them is like basically practicing non-harm. So non-harming your mind, practicing kindness.
So how does one go into non-harming their mind? Because that can be such a variety of things for different people based on their own experiences and traumas.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is a really good question. And it's honestly like, it's treating your mind with kindness. So being aware of your thoughts, right? So being aware if you're talking to yourself with kind of non-serving thoughts or self-limiting beliefs, and being able to take a step back and be the observer of your thoughts. And we can go into that too, but that is just another limb of yoga. And it's all to reach that path of, stilling the mind and being able to, just be in that enlightenment, that meditative state. And some can call it bliss, some can call it just being.
I want to dive into a little bit more about that and the different forms that yoga brings up for people, not just within, the quote unquote yoga position, sitting on a mat doing it, but it definitely comes as a lifestyle. And so how can people really sort of incorporate those things on maybe a small level? Because I could look at that and that would be very overwhelming, right? To see all those different, facets that I need to incorporate this into my life in order to feel more grounded, to feel more things. So like, how can people do it on a much smaller level to kind of feel it in sort of an everyday facet for maybe 10, 15 minutes a day?
Yes. One of my favorite grounding practices is really to just journal. I think that's another way of just free flowing, right? Like being in that meditative state of just releasing any thoughts in your mind, and you're kind of clearing more space in your mind and being able to, just be present with your thoughts and let go of anything that you might have been holding in your head that needs to just be released out on paper. Another thing is simply listening to a guided meditation. Meditation is a huge, if not like the most important part of yoga too. The yogis say that we practice these physical postures to prepare essentially for Shavasana, the best posture of class. Like your surrender, like being in that meditative state.
I just want to clarify too, because Shavasana is literally when we're just like laying there at the end, right? And you're just soaking in all the work kind of, but like also not, because you're not thinking at that point either. You're just being at the end and taking that breath and being like.
And you mentioned the breath. That's another simple yet just transformative way of becoming aware of yourself and your surroundings, is just tuning in with your breath. And something that I reflected on recently is, we can be so hard on ourselves on thinking that it's hard to sit down. Sure, you could say it's hard to sit down and just be still, but if we can reframe that narrative of saying like, oh, actually it's really easy to just sit down and close my eyes and just breathe. Like, breathing is something that we can take for granted sometimes, but like breathing we don't even think about, but our bodies just naturally do it, and it's such a gift. So being able to tune in and like be aware of every inhale and exhale without expecting any like profound like revelation, because I think sometimes we can put that expectation on ourselves to like, oh, I need to like have this crazy experience, but even just tuning in with your breath can really ease your nervous system and be a form of meditation too.
I don't know if this is true for you guys, but I feel like every time I'm expecting something or I want something to turn out a certain way, it never turns out that way. Usually when I just go into something open and believing that I'm going to try it is usually when I get those little hidden gems and I'm like, I was not expecting that. Because if anything, it gives your mind then the space for new things to come in. But if you go into something always thinking that it's like going to be hard or that it has to be a certain way or not, actually, you don't have the space in your mind then to welcome in the things that actually need to be brought up. Like, you have to make space in order for new things to come in, because if you're constantly thinking about the same things in your head, there's no room up there anymore. Like, you can't get the new signals coming in or the new ideas or the things you actually need to hear.
Yeah, like listening.
Yeah.
Listening to your inner knowing. And I think that's something that, for those who are listening, can really benefit from. Sometimes you just need to give yourself that space to be quiet with yourself, especially in this day and age. Like, I'm susceptible to it too, like getting overwhelmed with all the external like noise, like social media and all that, which is great too, but being able to discern when you need to just unplug and start bringing in other inputs, like just being able to just quiet down and take the time to step away from your phone or whatever, even for a couple minutes, like you said, can literally change your mind. And like, I'm like, wow, Bianca, sometimes you just needed that. Like, I will get a download and be like, oh, that's all I needed to do. And sometimes it's like the most simple thing. I think
it usually is. It's literally the most simple thing on earth. As humans, we love to complicate things so much, and everything's such a big deal, when it's like, if you just take a moment to listen, a lot of times the answer's right in front of you, or you already know it. It's just like, we talk about this with therapy all the time, is essentially like, we're just a guide. Like coaches, therapists, yoga instructors, we're just a guide teaching people how to tune into themselves, which is where the answers are. We all have the answers within ourselves. We just have to listen and harness that power. And I know you say you don't really practice yoga, but like, I've seen you so many times too, Matt, where you're like, I need a beat, I need a minute. And like, you talk about the power in that so frequently.
That is true. That is true. Yeah. And I never really considered it a part of like, quote unquote, yoga or meditation, right? Because it's just like, it's not commercially what I knew. Right. Or like, it's not necessarily
the label that you need to put on it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is so fascinating, because I'm like sitting over here, I'm like, wow, there are so many ways I incorporate different aspects of yoga in my life every single day. And I'll even say one thing. I just want to like compliment. I just want to say one thing I'll compliment you on is that like you were talking about like breathing and breath, and like even how you hold yourself, like in the studio when we were in the car, like just like you just held yourself with like such incredible, like you just hold yourself with like such composure.
Yeah.
But like such like a great like way of just like like such a like a soft and very healing way. Like You're was in the car with you and I felt so like safe.
Oh,
and it was just like, but like
that's one of the best compliments.
Like, truly,
that was a lot.
Yeah, like I genuinely was like, I feel like I could like open my heart to you, like so that like you just like came in with such just like hello, like I'm like, oh, hello, hi. You know. So yeah, so I just want to say like, and so you talking about that and literally physically seeing it reflected on you as a person was really cool. So I just love that.
Matt. That I received that, and I feel like that's the energy that I also feel from you both too, and it's easy, you know. And with relationships, I always love to connect on a deeper level, you know, and I find it so refreshing and so honestly like amazing to be able to connect with people on a soul level. Like that really is what brings me joy too. And I think there's real healing and opportunity to be vulnerable and the power of just opening up your heart. So it's like being able to see each other that way is just, it really is what I am passionate about. And I think it's the best thing.
Yeah. And even like with myself, I practice yoga. Yeah. I am not like nearly as advanced or like even a yogi as other people in this world are, or you yourself. But like, the one thing that yoga has done for me and why I'm so happy you're here sharing this with people and we're just talking about it is because through all these different types of yogas, because there's, as we talked about, there's so many different types of yogas too. Every one I try kind of like grounds me or opens my heart in a new way. Yeah. I remember, we can talk about this a little bit, like when I said when I first started doing it and it was extremely uncomfortable, but I'm like, I'm flexible. Why can't I do this? I realized that me putting my body in those certain positions was in a way a somatic therapy. Ooh. And those parts of my bodies were kind of holding on to like past traumas or emotions. Because I would be like, even to this day, I'll literally be in like pigeon sometimes. Because you know how they say you hold trauma in your hips sometimes? Yeah. I'll be in pigeon and I'll just get like a sharp shoot like up my back or down my leg. And I'm like, what was that? But after I feel so much better. And now after doing different types of somatic therapies, I'm like, that's what that was. It was like, because now I can do those poses, or even after, like, it's weird. You feel that shooting pain and then it's gone. And then you can actually do the, like, pose okay. Yeah. I'm like, once you let it out and you allow yourself to feel the uncomfortableness, it comes easier after that. So I'm like, if anything, to me, it's opened my heart. It's made me feel like I've got a weight lifted off of my body. And then that's why I love the Kundalini yoga, is because through the chanting and like the rhythm of like the ohms and all the other stuff, it gets me centered to the point where like you only have to think about the mantra. You only have to think about like the vibration that you're making, and it clears your mind so much. And I come out and I'm like, this is magic. Like it's real. Like that's all you need.
You're just riding the wave.
Yeah, kind of. I'm like, and that's what I love about like talking about yoga, is there's so many different modalities and ways. It's not just your traditional way that we all think it is.
Absolutely. Like everything we've been saying, like it's in a meditation sitting down, it's Kundalini, it's chanting mantras. And that's why I think anyone and everyone can find something that they resonate with for yoga. It doesn't have to be this cookie cutter, like you have to go to a hot yoga studio and do the hard yoga, but you know, if that's your jam, go for it. Like, and every day is different, you know? And so, I definitely encourage that.
So also too, in like yoga, we talk a lot about mantras. So in therapy, we all often talk about affirmations.
Ooh, yes.
And so I would love to know, do you have any mantras or affirmations that you personally share like with yourself kind of every day, or something that you could like share with our viewers that like really helps you sort of when you're in like tough spaces, or maybe you're in a space that's like maybe harder to sort of sit with?
Something that's been on my heart a lot recently I can share is leading with love, or I am a being of love. Mm-hmm. And I think that mantra or affirmation, whatever you want to call it, has been really helpful for me, especially in times of, uncertainty or fear. Like, coming from a place of love or leading with love just kind of eases me and reminds me to express with love, not reacting out of, fear. And, sometimes I've definitely had moments like that.
We all have.
But taking a pause. And I think that's honestly what yoga has taught me a lot too. Like, becoming aware of my tendencies or my patterns, or in Sanskrit, it's called samskara.
Oh my gosh,
and
this word,
Samskara kind of means like habitual patterns that don't necessarily serve you. But once you're aware of, like,
karma, in a way where it just keeps showing you the same situation just in different forms. Mm-hmm. And then you have to reflect and be like, oh my gosh, this is kind of the same situation or the same teaching, just disguised in like a different human being or a different situation or a different environment.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing. It's like, it's meant long term.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of times people blame it on that specific person or that specific environment. But if it's something that keeps showing up just in different forms until you realize, oh crap. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything like that?
Just, I don't know. No, I'd have to really sit
and it's okay if you don't have one. No, that's really nice. I had the same. That you don't have one, Matt.
I had the same reaction though. I was like, huh.
Do I have one?
I'm sure there's something.
I'm sorry.
Something that's continually like come up in my life that I know it probably wasn't good for me, and I did it anyways. I don't know. Like, honestly, bad relationships. Like, I just continually kept going to like a bad relationship.
So I feel like we all have to go through that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that to me was like actually like one that like I had to keep getting taught a lesson.
Yeah.
Every single time it happened. And I went back to it every single time thinking something was going to change, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that was a really big thing.
Do you know, mine was kind of on the same, but it's like the people I attract are usually very interesting people. But like something that I kind of realized was like, because I don't believe in blaming another person for technically like, because they're going to be who they want to be. Especially like, I do get that some individuals lie. Some people like aren't who they say they are. But a lot of times people do show you who they are, and we just choose to ignore it. Yeah. I came to a realization recently where I'm like, I'm breaking my own heart. I'm the one choosing to break my own heart. I'm done doing that. You know what I mean? Because essentially, like, if somebody shows you who they are and you're the one who keeps going back and going back, you're the one breaking your own heart, not them, because you know they're who they are. You knew the situation. You're choosing yourself to put yourself through that pain.
Truly.
And I'm like, I was, like, addicted to breaking my own heart. Oh. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Snaps to that. Like, that's freaking powerful that you recognize that pattern, that samskara, and then you like took aligned action.
I just remember when I said it, I'm like, I'm literally breaking my own heart. And I was like, because I know, we learn through these relationships, we grow, we know situations that I'm like, I've done this before, I've seen this before. If I do this again, I'm literally choosing this.
Yes.
Like, I'm done breaking my own heart. Screw that.
Yeah. No.
When it comes from a therapeutic perspective, now I got it in my head. It came through finally. Like a big thing, like just coming straight off the top would be addiction, right? And knowing like that certain things are bad for you, yet you do them anyway because it fills that void for even that split second, right? It doesn't have to be long, and you know like the long-term effects. You even know the short-term effects. You know the cause it's going to have on the relationships in your life, but you choose to do it anyways because it fills that current void. And so I think so that's a big thing that I've actually had a lot of conversations with people over the course of, my time as a therapist, just because of the fact that people will keep going back to the same thing if they know it feels good for them, even if it's not right for them. And it honestly, like he says, it actually sits taking someone else to be like, why are you doing this to yourself? You don't need to do this to yourself, but you're choosing to. So how can we choose to not let that happen? And so that was, so I just remembered formulating all that now.
I'm curious your opinion on this because I heard this within the past 2 weeks and I thought this was an interesting perspective. Is that in a way like addiction is a form of love just without the obligation?
Whoa.
Have you heard that?
I have not.
Whoa,
Do you get what I'm saying though with that? It's because addiction, regardless of what it is, if it's that dopamine fix from like somebody you know is not good for you and you continue to go back, or regardless if it is alcohol or drugs or whatever, a lot of times like you know that you don't have to put any effort into like what you're doing to yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like you go pick up the bottle, you show up to that person because you know they're gonna take you like that back because it's even though it's not good for you, like you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
So there's no obligation. There's no like promise to you or anybody else really. Like you just show up and you get that dopamine fix. You get that love. Because let's be honest though, like, and I'm surprised I'm saying this because I do believe like love conquers all and love should come easy and this and that. But like love is work. Like showing up for yourself every single day is work. Showing up for individuals is work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But like with addiction, a lot of times like that's why you're addicted is because it's love without having to put in the work.
Whoa.
You don't have to show up for anyone.
Yeah.
Damn.
And
I heard
it's kind
that
of
this
like
week and I was
unconscious.
Like, yeah.
Whereas like doing the work to heal or doing the work to not be addicted, it's like requires conscious.
It's easier
healing.
It's easier to sit there in like your depression or the toxic relationship or whatever. It's just obligation-free love.
Fuck.
I heard that though, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so deep. Like so deep. And if anything though, it made me just be like, I kind of want to do the hard thing though, because I want to love myself. I do want to show up. So like this hard thing is like the truest form of love. It's not that cheap stuff. It's not that unreal stuff. It's actually like, I'm doing this because I love myself for the other person. You know? I don't know. That blew my mind. So I was curious about your thoughts.
Yeah.
No,
where
like
did that come from?
Yeah, that was deep. I like my heart just felt like a whew.
I don't know. It was like a podcast or a book or something. This is my life. Every day I put out a podcast. Every day I read a book. It was somewhere, but what I heard, maybe it was on Instagram. I don't know. I was just
that's a really like reflection.
Yeah. When it comes to reflections, though, I know that you said when we were talking on the beach that like in a way yoga's helped you step into your own voice. Do you want to elaborate? Because I just remember when you told me that I was like, oh, like that's so powerful, though.
And it's funny because it's literally. Right now we are expressing our voice ourselves. Like I'm like so grateful to be able to show my voice and express my voice with you and everyone out here listening.
All of our listeners. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, you know, in younger me, I definitely struggled a lot expressing myself. I think a lot of it also intertwined with like people pleasing and being afraid to express my vulnerability because fears of like being judged or fears of, you know, maybe, and this is something that I'm doing right now. I'm tapping into inner child work, or I think there's another form like IFS, like internal family system.
Okay.
There's another.
Is that kind of like I say programming all the time, like how your family and like your environment when you were a youth influences how you are as an adult today?
So I've been kind of doing some, I guess you could call it like inner child healing or inner child reflection. And I think I remember sometimes I would like hear, oh, you're being too sensitive, or like you're crying too much. And I didn't realize like maybe those were reasons why that carried on with me throughout my adolescence and growing up, that bled into other areas of my life, making me afraid to like show my true self or express my voice. So yeah, I find that it's so empowering to be able to use your voice. Like we're all here to express our own truth, you know, whether that's a form of singing or like showing up as your true self in conversation. And it could be in a conversation or like on social media, wherever. So yeah, I feel like yoga has definitely ignited that healing path for me for expressing my voice. And, you know, teaching in class, for example, like
it must feel empowering.
Yeah, I remember my first class I ever taught, I was like, what? Like these they're listening to me. I remember I felt like I blacked out my first class. Like it was an out of body experience. And then all of a sudden, fast forward, we're in Shavasana. But yeah, definitely using your voice is something I'm very passionate about, and encouraging others to use their authentic voice. Yeah. Not being afraid to express how you feel, not being afraid to express what you're passionate about. And
So actually, I wanted to go back to a little bit talking about the voice.
Yeah.
That you talk so heavily about, and like finding, healing your inner child, finding your purpose, being able to come from a place of self-acceptance, and then also radically changing your life as well. You did a form of that in a way by completely sort of changing your career in what you were doing. So I also would love for you to talk a little bit about that as well, because of what you had done versus, where you are now. And kind of also talking with like us just with about sort of that process, how to go about that process for you, and sort of finding that those braveries and the tools needed to really sort of ground yourself in living the best life that you want for you.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So yeah, it's been a journey, I think. So the moment I realized that I wanted to step into becoming a full-time yoga instructor and essentially leave my previous 9-to-5 job, my full-time job, it really came from an inner voice.
Yeah.
An inner voice that wanted so badly to come out. And I think, in a way, it's like, I think the universe was just like nudging me, like knocking on the door, like, okay, Bianca. And it got to a point where I think I was just kind of ignoring it, or maybe not fully letting it come out. And that affected me negatively. I remember being so heavily burnt out from my previous job. And, I learned and grew so much from that past job. However, it got to a point where I realized it was no longer in alignment with what I wanted in my life and what I could foresee for myself, what I truly wanted for myself. And I had to come to terms with that. I remember just feeling just disconnected, like coming back kind of to that place of what drew me to my first yoga class, feeling disconnected. I wanted to connect to myself again. And I think in this way of that challenge, the next challenge was facing that misalignment again and essentially having to make a choice for myself and listening to my voice. So yeah, I remember just finally realizing that, okay, this is no longer serving me in this time of my life anymore. And if not now, when? And, I remember just, speaking to my family. And of course, they obviously coming from a Asian background, like Filipino parents, of course, they were, encouraging me, like, are you sure? Like, do you want to apply for another job? And I love my family. I love my parents. And that was also another teacher for me. I was like, okay, like they are showing that they're caring for me, but it's okay if they don't necessarily understand. And I still have to listen to my own voice. I still have to listen to what is my truth. So I made that decision for myself because I also knew that teaching yoga, guiding others to embrace their own authenticity and feel connected through mindfulness, through movement, through meditation, that is really what was calling to my soul. And I remember teaching yoga at the same time as I was working my full-time job. It was such a stark, such a big, it was like I was living two lives almost. And I think maybe that needed to happen for me to recognize, like, okay, this path is obviously not for you anymore. I think deep down you really want to follow this other path. Yeah. So go for it, Bianca.
Oh my gosh. See, I want to applaud you again because I feel like so many people, they recognize it, but they struggle with the implementation part.
Oh, it was hard, definitely.
Completely. Yeah, they struggle with like I feel like everyone knows when there's a disconnect. It's just they choose to bury it down because they're scared of the implementation. They're scared that like their parents or their friends don't agree with them.
Yeah.
And then like you took the step, and I love how because I have told Matt this. I'm like, a lot of people are like, you don't have to quit cold turkey what you were doing to step into this new self of yours, right? Like you can combine the two. And usually from combining the two things is when you find out if it's right for you or if it's not. So like with yours, I applaud you too because you were listening. You're like, I have this old me and I have this new me. I like the new me better. That's who I'm going to step into now. Yeah. That's what people need to realize is you can combine the two. And a lot of times that makes it just more clearer also.
Yes. Yeah. I love the way you like, I'm like a visual learner, so I could like literally see that. So yeah, no, that's
amazing.
Beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. On that note too, then, since we're kind of ending with how you transitioned into this, do you have any other questions for Bianca?
Yeah, I actually, going back a little bit, going back to a little bit in what we talked a lot about, how sort of mindfulness and grounding has really shaped who you are. And I think one thing that a lot of people really struggle with, and I know a lot of people have experienced, is trauma, right? And so how do you see, have you met people that have like gone through very traumatic things they've seen like massive amounts of yoga or not massive amounts, but just yoga in general being able to help kind of some of those lived experiences?
Yeah, that is such a important question. And for anyone who has gone through traumatic experiences like that, there is trauma-informed yoga, and we learned that actually in my yoga teacher training. And it's so important to know, especially if you're guiding a class. Some people, sometimes we have hands-on adjustments, and that's something that you need to be trauma informed. Not everyone wants to be touched, and that's completely okay. And I think yoga opens up a path to being more connected to your body and coming as you are. So I haven't had many personal experiences practicing with students that have gone through that, but I know there is trauma-informed yoga, and there is definitely healing practices for people that who can implement, practices like tuning in with the breath, meditation, practicing mindfulness, and connecting to your body, really connecting to your, cultivating self-love. I think
that's so
that's
huge.
One of the,
I love it.
The gifts of yoga for sure.
And the fact that you guys do trauma-informed yoga I had no idea. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
There are specialties in that for sure.
Love it.
Thank you for bringing that to light for everybody, because I feel like that could definitely help a lot of people like go look for a trauma-informed yoga instructor.
Yeah.
Like seek that help. On that note, is there any other like last notes you would like to give our viewers, or words of advice or anything?
Yeah, I would say you deserve to be heard and seen and valued as your authentic self. And the people who see you for you and welcome you and embrace you are people you never want to let go of. And once you start to embrace your own uniqueness and authenticity, you're just going to attract the right people and places and opportunities into your life. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Me too. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Bianca, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here in this conversation. And thank you guys for listening. Until next time, I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina and Matt, for both having me here.
Of course.